Should be recording.
It's recording. Excellent. So welcome to the webinar series on tonight, the 16th of September. The couple of things to just cover with you guys if you're new or joining us for the first time. This is not a tiled meeting, so please govern yourselves accordingly. We ask that you keep your microphone on mute. You can use the space bar if you would like to add something in. We will have a question and answer section at the end. So this session is being recorded. So if you do have some questions, some things that kind of pop up, feel free to use the chat feature. I'll keep an eye on those and we'll entertain some of those towards the end. We ask that the speaker be given around 15 to 20 minutes to give his presentation. There will be a poll at 7:25. I will open that up since the meeting is scheduled to leave at 7:30. Feel free to hang around as long as you would like. And then one final thing to note is these videos are available through Grand Lodge. They're out on a YouTube format, but they're not listed. So if you would like those, you'd need to go through the Grand Lodge to get those. And you can reach out to any member of the committees, leadership, mentorship, membership, and communication, and we will get you guided in the right direction. There's next Wednesday, the 23rd, we'll have the Operative Mason Square given by Worship Brother Brian Smith. He's out of the Rochester Lodge. And just a real quick couple other things coming up that you'll may find very enjoyable. So please continue to register as you've done and arm yourself with some great questions. One little piece for advertisement here. There is currently a show and tell initiative going on. This challenge will go to the end of the year. And we're just asking for a fun, interactive way for the brothers to do some, a challenge, get together with the brothers of your lodge and take a look at, what is Freemasonry in Minnesota? What will your life and legacy say about Freemasonry? And how will you help others find their ways to reward the craft? This should be a fun little way for you guys to get some interactions here during our, this era of COVID. And there is more information at bythecompass.org/challenge. I know that Worshipful Brother Brad Phelps is spearheading this, and he has put together a couple of great video presentations or representations for you to go by. So feel free to reach out to any of the committee if you need any other assistance with that. So it is at this time, it's my honor to welcome Brother Hans Nies to join us this evening, and his discussion is Freemasonry in Decline, the Importance of Lodge Education. You should have the con.
Okay, let me try this here. Okay, how's that?
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for everybody for joining. This is an encore presentation. I did this several weeks ago. It's about membership in Freemasonry. And so let me start off with a kind of a controversial picture. And if I can get this going, there you go. And this shows kind of a picture, or it's actually a gravestone, stating that in loving memory, Freemasonry, 1717, and after about 300 years of, plus years of successful endeavors, this speculates that we will kind of end somewhere in the 21st century. And now we don't know what inspired this artist to put this together, but we do know that there's actually quite a bit of discussion as to this is bogus or this is true. But rather than kind of going into controversial conversations here, let's take a look at the numbers. And what you see here is a graph that depicts the membership over from actually 1940 all the way up to 2017. That's the last year that our membership data is available from the Masonic Service Association. And it's depicted in 5-year intervals, from, like I said, from 1940. And we see it peaked around the 1960s. And if we look at that last data point, 2017, membership has dropped about 75%. Now, Having said that, the influx of Masons are post-World War II. Obviously, members joined for other reasons that the craft probably had to offer. So we naturally see a large calibration of numbers, meaning that that influx was not necessarily artificial. These were real members, but many that joined post-World War basically disengaged subsequently. So really what is of interest to us is what is happening in the last couple of years, and let's say from the 90s on. And to get a better understanding of that, I also show now a line, that's a yellow line that pops up here. And that line, let me see if I can get my laser going. That line drops gradually, and in the 1990s, we see that the membership decline is about 15% every 5 years, or said differently, 3% per year. And so that's kind of in the 90s, and it keeps steady all the way up to the last data point, 2017. If we then would take that 3% per year decline and would extrapolate in that, and that's basically what this white bar chart shows here, what that would suggest is that by 2050, national, so North American membership, from its peak of 4 million and the current membership of about 1 million will drop down to about 370,000 members. And due to operative and financial considerations, 75% of the lodges that we know today will be closed. Now, you will notice that in 2010, there was a kind of a slight uptick of our membership, followed by a decline. Anybody wants to take a suggestion as to where that came from? Hearing none, I'll give the answer. So it basically, Freemasonry got into the media. We have books like the Da Vinci Code, movies, etc. It's also coinciding with some jurisdiction adopting the one day to Masonry. So we see a peak there, and then subsequently, since the supply was pretty much absorbed, we see a dip subsequently there. Now, in addition to that graph, there are a couple of other observations that I would like to share, and that is that over the last 10 years, 50% of the members that enroll into the EA program does not finish their Master Mason degree. So they stop and leave the lodge somewhere halfway, or half of them leave the lodge before they complete the degree. In the 70s, membership duration was on average about 22 years. The last data around this suggests that in 2015, average membership is about 5 years. Now, there are a couple of authors that have published their works in around membership decline, etc. And according to their projection, it's approaching about 3 years. So the average Mason is about 3 years associated with the craft. And as we know from our own kind of experience, at best, I mean, we might have 100 members within a lodge, but at best 10 to 50% are really active in the lodge. And if you take that and apply this to the 2050 number, that would say that about 37,000 members are really keeping Masonry going by 2050. So it's somewhat of a alarming situation. And obviously the question that pops up, why are we in decline? And frankly, that conversation, discussion, and the reasons are equally controversial as whether we are in decline or not. And actually there was one fellow that had an idea for a membership drive where his slogan was that Freemasons don't die, join to find out why. So I mean, it's kind of a really quite creative where how people look at this particular topic. And but the good news here is that we have several findings from, say, Sean, can I ask you a quick question? I have this thing popping up here on my screen as to what is happening in the thing. Is that something that I can move? Yes, I did it. Okay, sorry. No, it kept interfering. I couldn't see what I was presenting. So Anyhow, so while we're in decline, our the Masonic Renewal Task Force and Committee, actually they started in the 80s. They started conducting a number of surveys among past members as current members. And over the years, over the last 10 years, I think there's a fair amount of publication and surveys that were done by the various jurisdictions. And they looked at, why are we actually in decline? What's happening? And the answers are spread in quite an array, but what I've done is I've grouped them for those topics that belong together. And I'm going to share 6 buckets with you that probably covers about 80 to 90% of the answers provided. So the very first one was time commitment. Masonry takes too much time, and that's time I don't have. And not surprising, because if you compare life in the 60s versus life today, our work has clearly spilled over in our private life. Our Masonry does compete with plenty of other initiatives that are claiming demand on our spare time. So it's not an unreasonable thing that we see ourselves in competition with other initiatives. The second one was, it was not what I had expected. And to some extent, that's not surprising either, because for an organization that keeps its inner working close to its chest, it's not surprising that whatever motives move the candidates into the craft, that we find some kind of a, this is not what I had expected. And we mentioned earlier the Da Vinci Code and Freemasonry in the public domain and in media. Obviously, there are a number of expectations created what Freemasonry is. And once these fellows join, find out that's not really what it is. What came out, however, as somewhat, not necessarily shocking, but certainly there's something that we should take to our heart. And that is that 90% of those that were surveyed emphasized the importance of education. Sadly, 65% reported that no education was provided at their lodges. And I think that is a discrepancy that we need to talk about. The next topic was, and we all have run into this to some extent, our lodge experiences are boring, they're static, nothing happens, it's always the same in the lodge. When asked about the ritual and the values, it was kind of surprising what came out of there, but when reflecting upon it, it makes sense. Some of that Masonic content is outdated. While I was going through the degree, I was impressed. There was this awe factor, but frankly, subsequent, it didn't really mean anything to me. And the other aspect, and this pertained more to candidates that were going through the program, is that there's a lack of substance, meaning I joined the craft as a good man to become better. And instead of finding answers and or guidance to this, I see that my journey is really emphasizing protocol and proficiency. So that's something to take away from too. Those that were Master Mason and had made it through, they said, well, I kept visiting the lodge, and unless you're really interested in fundraising or go in the officer line, there's frankly nothing else to do. Right? So shame on us, but frankly, that's what these. And then there is a bucket of others that does not apply to the lodges represented in this webinar here. That's probably from some other states that members felt they were treated poorly. They were not welcomed, cliques that were hard to approach, mentors were not available and had no clue, and lodge politics were in the way of enjoying my experience at the lodge. So that's kind of a summarizing the 6 main buckets that can be extracted out of the responses from the various surveys. And obviously, we cannot fix them all. That's a nearly impossible task, but many, I believe, can be fixed by education and proper candidate guidance to turn those around. So in that context, I do believe that the role of lodge education is instrumental in really offering what men are seeking. If we hear that 90% feels that they want to see education in the lodge and 65% does not get any education, I think it is important that that will be brought to the surface and for the purpose of retaining existing members. And equally important, as these candidates come into the lodge, they need to have a exposure to the craft to appreciate the values and learn about them and apply them in their daily life. And frankly, if we look ahead, our membership will become even more challenging in the future. Right now, we're serving 4 distinct generations, and the most recent generation that has knocked on our doors are the millennials, and they have an even higher demand as to the expectations of their large experience. And in this context, I do want to kind of bring your attention to a booklet that recently surfaced by McCoy. It's called 40 Million Men, The Importance of Millennial Generation to Freemasonry. It's co-authored by a number of writers, McCall, Heller, Nelson, Stewart, and Friedman. And they've done an outstanding job characterizing the millennial generation, what they're looking for, what their values are what motivates them. But more importantly, they mirrored, or basically they say, you know what, if we look at what these guys are looking for, Freemasonry is a near perfect match. So here's an opportunity for the craft to open the door to somebody who's knocking with a means of providing what they're looking for. And what is really worthwhile towards the latter part of the book, it contains a whole series of very practical things that lodges can do to become, to have these millennials resonate with the message within Freemasonry. So I just wanted to point out, I think it's a must read for every master to familiarize himself as we look at the millennials as our future generation. So membership is, as we have seen in some of the other presentation, it's a multifaceted approach. It's not just education. So it starts with the acknowledgement of the member, and the various committees at the Grand Lodge have done an outstanding job of providing us with the tools how to greet a candidate, how to familiarize him with the lodge. The whole mentor program, we had a fabulous presentation with some very practical tools and insights that were provided. Last week, our Bishop Brother Andy gave us a great overview about education, what we can do to enhance our education. And last but not least, as we all know, once these guys become Master Masons, obviously follow up, bringing them back into the lodge, engaging them into activities is instrumental in retaining it. What I'm going to focus on is really education for right now. And what I would like to share with you is a program that we have been using at Anoka Lodge for the purpose of educating candidates, but also equally important, educating existing members. So, and I want to start with a brief outline of this program. So each degree, Entered Apprentice, Fellow Craft, Master Mason, has 4 educational subsections. The subsections are an introductory section, a section that deals with the proficiency, a section that deals with the ritual, and a miscellaneous bucket. So let me give a feel for what this is. So as most of these new men, as they get into the lodge, probably haven't seen the lodge at all or barely know what's going on, it's important that we explain what are the rules, what are the functions, what the officers are doing, why we're doing these things. Also in the introduction, we provide them a little bit with a history. And when I say history with a story, it's not just a date and an event, because there are things that led up to the event. There are key characters in these events. And make the story, make history living. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then early on, we, in essence, teach them some tools as they go through the degrees. Memorization, obviously one that is very important. After the introduction, we basically proceed and go into the proficiency. And the first thing we do is we break each line apart, or each section of proficiency apart, and translate this into plain English, because it's unreasonable to assume that each and everybody who walks into the lodge is familiar with antiquated English. So break it down, explain it in each English. Then explain what it says and why it says that, and tie it to something that's happening in your real life. Because frankly, brother, the proficiency itself is a treasure trove of very practical philosophical, moral, and ethical guidelines. So it's a shame if we just pump that into somebody's memory without really understanding what it means and how it can be of help for them to be a human being and being a Mason. Once we're done with that, we move into the ritual, and all of us have gone through this experience, meaning at the night of the degree, you at best can remember 10, 15%. The week later, maybe 5% of what happened there. So it's important that we're going to go back, review what happened there, and explain the plot, explain what happened in the degree, point out all the symbols and allegories, but also give an interpretation of this. And again, an interpretation in plain language, and explain how it applies to you as a Mason in your daily life. And then depending on the time in between the degree cycles, we tap into that fourth bucket where we expand on the Masonic history. The candidate might be very excited about being a Freemason, but he also needs to realize that the outside world might not share that excitement. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of anti-Masonic stuff out there. And so we prepare them in terms of explaining what this is, where it comes from, and how to respond. Each degree is completed with a Q&A, a multiple choice Q&A test, where we review in the form of question and answers the highlights of this particular degree, expand on Masonic opportunities, whether dependent bodies or other activities within the lodge, and then if the candidates are inclined, we point them out towards further study. So the whole structure, the whole program is really interactive. It contains a lot of audio, visual, but I think a different way of saying it's structured in a Socratic way. Rather than presenting the content, we are posing the question, right? So when we talk about, in the end of the apprentice degree, when we talk about living stones, well, what do you think is a living stone? We have a discussion amongst the candidates, facilitate the discussion, and then subsequently provide pretty much the commonly accepted kind of a interpretation. So, but it is important that this is happening in a dialogue, so not just data dumping. So the total package is about 300 slides. It takes about 20 to 30 hours to get through, or it depends on if you do the whole package. And some of the lodges have already adopted this programs and tailored them towards their specific needs. So the way we are doing this and putting this together is we're meeting with candidates weekly, spend about 2 to 3 hours, either in the lodge or at home. We encourage the candidates to rehearse as an independent team to have as much time available for educational content. We alternate between the proficiency and the lecture to avoid burnout. The content, as I said, is very interactive. So rather than dumping the content, we do this in a Socratic kind of a way where I ask the question, facilitate the discussion, and extract content. But it is important, and I think that was something that became very apparent through my journey many years ago, that how does this pertain to daily life? Because we are Freemasons not within the lodge, we are not Freemasons on paper, we're Freemasons in society, with the family, at work, and life in general. So it is really important that you tie these Masonic principles into our daily life and give them guidance how to apply them. And then I won't dwell on this because the other committees have already done webinars on mentorship as well as follow-up. So what's next? My very first advice, and everybody who is interested in furthering the cause of education and influencing membership, reach out to the Grand Lodge committees. These guys have a fabulous and outstanding repository of tools that can be used in the lodge, whether it's the leadership, whether it's the mentorship committee. These are very meaningful packages that can be applied and tailored towards your lodge. So that's a great starting point. As for the education, if you are interested in this particular program, meaning the one that I just presented, it's available for free. Just reach out to me. It's available on Google Drive. But a word of caution, we all have presented content that somebody else has generated. So the tools themselves, meaning the program itself, is not the solution. You got to find a champion within your lodge, or multiple champions in a lodge. And then we can train those champions through a regional training system that either in person, although with COVID, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we can do this online. Or we have actually quite successfully kind of experimented with synchronizing the degree cycles among lodges, where we then assign one lodge, in this case it was Anoka, as the education lodge, and the candidates from the other lodges came over and took part of the education, and it facilitates some great discussion because it's kind of this kind of everybody gets something else out of it, and the exchange of these experiences are really very important. So in closing, in the context of education and membership, I do believe, and I firmly believe, that if we educate men, they will recognize the values within the craft. And when they do that, they are much more likely to secure the future of the craft and hopefully have an impact on membership in the years to come. So with that in mind, that concludes my presentation. Before I hand it over, I want to put one shameless plug in here. Tomorrow night, the Scottish Rite is organizing another educational session about at 6:30. So this is about sacred geometry. I will be giving that. So if you're interested, register at the Scottish Rite and enjoy, hopefully, an insightful presentation. So with that, thank you very much. I'm open to questions, comments, suggestions. So, and I'm going to give it over back to, if I can do this.
Thanks, Hans. That was a great presentation. Brothers, I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. Please feel free, though, to open up. I know that Sean Carrick had asked one question, and that was, are there plans for rolling this training program out to other lodges, or a how-to for the lodge? So I'm going to start the poll, and let's get you fired up with that one, Hans.
Yeah, so Sean, there are no official plans. This is all in and around kind of myself and Terrence reaching out to other lodges and making it available to them. We are planning a number of online programs where we train the champions, so to speak. I have a similar initiative going on with a lodge in California. So it's really, it's us peddling this thing now, and hopefully it gains some traction because you got to get through that initial introduction. And for instance, Nelson Lodge and Templar Lodge, as well as Sherborne Lodge, have adopted this. And frankly, you don't have to take that whole program. You pick pieces out of there that are very suitable for your lodge, for the skills and the knowledge of whoever is giving that presentation to the candidates, whether it's the mentor or whether it's the Leo. So it is modular. So you can use it in whatever way you see fit for it. So, by the way, I was asked if how the membership numbers are in North America compared to Minnesota, and they are pretty much identical, meaning the membership numbers in Minnesota follow the exact same pattern as we saw in the graph for the nation.
Excellent. Any other questions, brothers? Or comments? Words of wisdom? You know, I can speak on behalf of Hans's program. We had been the Metro West Masters and Wardens, is now the Masonic Association, had gotten together with this, and they had done a presentation last year, and Hans had done a great job over a series of nights meeting and doing this presentation. And we had, as the sitting master of Nelson Lodge and seeing the value of it, had brought it back and found a brother there to champion it. And we've really noticed the change and the knowledge, but more importantly is the things you gain from by going through it. There's just a ton of information that Hans has put in here. You know, it's very enlightening. So even if you've been a Mason for a while, I would highly recommend taking a look at this.
And it's kind of to that point, Shannon, we have sometimes mentors popping into the class, and it's not unprecedented that guys who were Mason 15, 20 years all of a sudden I had no clue that what that meant, or we're in around a symbol that we were using, or an allegory, or the Masonic tools and the like. So there's a lot to learn, and Masonry is a very deep subject matter.
There are a couple hands up there, Shannon.
Brothers, feel free to just govern yourselves accordingly, but tune in.
All right.
William, Carter, and Larry. Oh, I see what's going on. Thanks. I had the thing was up blocking me. Let's go with, I saw William first. So Brother William.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to interject. I'm a Master Mason from Ohio. I am with the Dover Lodge in Westlake, Ohio, number 489. And I just wanted to thank you for the invitation. And I had seen you on Facebook, and it's always interesting to see what is being done in other states and getting and sharing information. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Welcome, brother.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I believe Worshipful Brother or Worshipful Master Larry, you had something to share?
Just a comment. Last night we had a Hiram Award. Our award winner was an LEO, someone who had never been in the East, however, has been an LEO for 6 or 7 years. In Winona, we think lodge education is absolutely imperative to growth. So Hans, I really appreciate your effort and your emphasis on this. I will be looking into getting the program over in Winona because I think we need it. But just a well done presentation this evening. Just wanted to compliment you and say thank you very much from someone that really believes LEOs are absolutely crucial to the survival and the growth of the craft. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I'm Stan. I do not know if you're a master, so I'm just going to call everybody out as brother now. So Brother Stan, I see that you've raised your hand.
I am actually a past master twice. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it right the first time, so I did it the second time. Actually a past master from Washington, from District of Columbia Grand Lodge, and also was raised in Pennsylvania. What I was just inquiring, I apologize, I came late to the presentation. Unfortunately, you got to love Zoom when it won't let you in. Is the presentation going to be possibly available on a video format so it can be shared with other lodges in other jurisdictions? So we could do is share it with our members, because unfortunately people don't realize. I hate to say it this way, and you might agree with it. We go through trends and we go through different waves. Been a master for about 20 years now. Unfortunately, we go through the high notes. We had a lot of members that got interest in District of Columbia when you had Dan Brown and all that stuff. And unfortunately, when they realized, unfortunately, you're not going to find Mary Magdalene when you find different things. But I'm just saying, though, is there a way for the presentation, for this presentation, if it's going to be available on a format DVD, so for Hans Speaks lectures? I mean, this is actually excellent for. I have friends that know of his lectures before, but I was just wondering, is he going to actually put them possibly on a DVD available for lodge, so we could view them in lodges, or we can share it with our brethren
Shannon?
as well?
Shannon or Jason, do you want to take the answer there?
So I was just going to say, I have just sent you in the chat section there, Worshipful Brother. I did send you the pre-recording that was done for Hans for this back in the original presentation. And then if you do go to our website, to the Grand Lodge website, under Members Resources, you'll find that there's another tab that links to webinars. You'll need to click on the plus symbol, and
Okay.
it'll actually open up our archives.
Okay.
Have access to the archives there.
I put the link
Yeah.
in the chat directly to that archive page for all of the video sessions.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Because unfortunately, you might agree with it. Unfortunately, you have certain groups that are getting away from what Freemasonry was. Unfortunately, they're bringing, I hate to say it though, you have lodges in the DC area that's bringing talks of Aleister Crowley, for God's sakes, into the meetings. I mean, it's just different things that you might agree with. I mean, unfortunately, we have to get back to people knowing what the true meaning of our symbols were, what the true meaning, which I gave, how can I say it, when it came to, how can I say, instruction, Pennsylvania was excellent for that. And unfortunately, and other brothers will agree with it, unfortunately, there's a lot of jurisdictions that the fallout that caused a lot of these things. We have a lot of brethren that join. I hate to say it, I call this one day a Mason, Masonic light. Unfortunately, we have too many low-carb Masons out there that don't understand what it's all about.
Yeah, so
I'm not.
Stan, in answer to your question, I can resonate with you a lot of the traditional values, the morals, the ethics, the interpretation, and the guidance that Masonry can provide to a broader has somewhat lost, and it's kind of a but this program is really geared towards reinstilling, reinforcing, and not reinforcing, but reiterating these values. And in this context, I want to respond to something that Ronald Corey posted. Is I like to see this getting rolled out in Indiana. Maybe it wasn't clear from the onset, but we are doing this right now with or in the process of doing this remotely as well. So we're using Zoom to train the trainers to get familiar with this program, and since everything is available online, familiarize them with them, that they in turn can apply that to their lodges and implement it in their lodges, either as educating candidates, or to provide education to the brothers within the lodge.
Right, because I hate to, I don't want to be a conversation hawk, but I mean, unfortunately, when you have grand lodges taking away our landmarks, I mean, I'm not putting anybody down, and don't take it the wrong way though, but I mean, our Grand Lodge, just because of a spat with one lodge, took out moral turpitude of one of the landmarks. I mean, there's a lot of things that have been just going. We're losing. I mean, I hate to say it though, we're losing what Freemasonry was, and unfortunately, it's adapting to society. And unfortunately, this was an organization that was not supposed to adapt to society. You have it. You go back into with Franklin Roosevelt and Teddy Roosevelt, when they could walk into a lodge and they didn't have Secret Service details, for God's sake. We don't have that same. We got to redevelop that. How can I say it? We want to bring back what I remember from my grandfather being a Mason, my great-grandfather being a Mason. I mean, this was a person, everybody that you want to be, brothers that you would, a person that a brother, and you bring a brother into your lodge, that's almost like your house, who you would trust with your wife, with your child, and everything else. And unfortunately, there's a lot of jurisdictions that are shortcutting it. And unfortunately, we have to go back to, so we don't lose our identity, our true identity. And sorry if I'm rambling, but I hope you understand the gist of what I'm trying to say. And coming from a person that's less than 50, that's actually surprisingly so in my jurisdiction.
Well, no, and thanks for sharing that, brother. That's the one thing we got to keep in mind, is it's good to hear, those what's happening in Masonry, far and near, right? Those, as it was mentioned, sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down, and we see that activity take place in lodges, and you hear of it. So, it's to be mindful of it, and we've seen the value of education and being able to provide that Anybody else have any other questions or comments? There was a brother Rodney or Ronald Corey had asked, kind of what's next, Hans? How does he get that information? I told him, feel free to give me a call. But,
I give him my email address, so I will see if we can connect that way and get something going.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, brothers, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this time.